Alright folks, welcome back to Module 0. We are getting close to wrapping things up for this introductory material and jumping into the fun stuff, starting with Module 1. So, in this particular video we're going to be talking about an element of the course that's designed to kind of help you make sense of a lot of the material, which can oftentimes be confusing. What are called POEs for future services and some general tips for succeeding in the course. So this is all about making sure that you're as prepared as possible to do as well as you can with material that's oftentimes considered difficult. So, starting at the beginning, a lot of students tell me over the years that they are intimidated by taking a stats course, that they're worried about it, they hear horror stories, they're not good with mathematics or numbers, and there's a lot of reasons why that's the case. Statistics is a blend of abstract concepts. That's a very underrated part of the course, how much having a conceptual understanding of why you're doing what you're doing matters. Actual calculations, where we take data sets and we calculate statistics for them. We do mathematical stuff. That's why you're going to need a calculator. Interpretation, figuring out what the results of those calculations actually mean. That's kind of where the concepts and the calculations meet, is being able to make sense of the results that we've got and what they tell us. And again, you're frequently going to see the use of formulas that involve a lot of symbolic language. You're going to see a lot of Greek letters, a lot of capital English letters that are designed to represent different quantities, different operations. You're going to have to keep that language straight as well. Overall, it sometimes can be troublesome to people. They get really worried about this, they panic. Some people, tighten up and they make mistakes. Some people get avoidant, they don't want to think about it, and so they start ignoring it and they fall behind. I'm here to tell you that statistics is something that every single student is capable of doing well on. I didn't say it'd be easy. I didn't say there wouldn't be a learning curve. But again, the actual underlying structure to the course is pretty basic and not that complicated. The tough part is being able to kind of get your hands around what that essence, what those key ideas are. So there is hope. We definitely can, again, create an environment where you can do as well as possible, even with material that's a little bit different than maybe the other courses in your major, or it's a little bit more difficult for you than other material might be. So here's some general tips on how to do well in the class. We're going to bounce back and forth from this list, and then we'll talk about those POEs and FFSs. So the first tip to do well in the course, this is an online course. In order to avoid having issues with deadlines, submitting things late, confirm that you have access to everything as soon as possible. You should already have Blackboard access, or you probably wouldn't have been able to find this video. Make sure that your Cengage and Applia systems work fine. Make sure your webcam is functional. Make sure your calculator works. Make sure everything that you've got is functional. If you look into the Module 0 folder, there's a document in there called the Online Student Success Guide. You'll want to download that during this process. It has links to class resources. It has links to tech support, people you can contact when you do have problems getting access. Again, I'm not an IT person. I can't resolve a lot of access issues, and it also has a bunch of other stuff related to the course, like the different sites that we access. Additionally, if you get to the second half of that success guide, it has some general tips for how to succeed in online classes, and this class specifically, even above and beyond what we're talking about here. Once you've got access, the key thing is stay involved. You're not coming to a classroom every single day. You have a situation where you're allowed to be self-paced and go through at your own speed. That can sometimes lead to people getting distracted, slacking off for a while, and then kind of trying to sprint to catch up. You really, really want to make sure that you're working on this material regularly. View the videos, do the chapter readings in the book, engage in the discussion, ask questions, do the practice quizzes, do the real homework assignments. Again, it's a lot, but that's what happens when you compress a 15-week semester into a 5-week summer session. You should expect to be doing substantial work on this course at least 5 days out of every 7, and that usually means every single weekday, but you can work some weekend stuff in there as well if you have weekdays when you can't accomplish what you want to. So continue progressing, try to make progress basically every single day. Try to be working on the homework continually. Don't put yourself in a situation where you're constantly scrambling those last 24 or 48 hours before each exam or each assignment is due. That's a recipe for struggling. Again, keep your head down, keep grinding away at the material. Again, do your homework and assignments. Use extra practice if necessary. There are always activities in the book There are practice problem sets that I showed you in Applia and the lecture on Applia. And again, there's those practice quizzes that are uploaded every time. So make sure you're getting those repetitions in and you're doing the extra work, especially on areas that you're having trouble with. This is tough in an online course, but this sort of material, people tend to understand it a lot better when they've had to explain it or when they've had to talk about it with others. That may not be very easy to do for you. You may feel kind of isolated as a student, but generally explaining concepts or discussing them works a lot better than just reading the notes over and over again. So in this course, use your discussion forums to talk about this stuff. Contact me to have someone to talk to. If you know people in the class, try to talk with them about it, or even people that have taken the class in the past. When you are studying, don't just reread the notes over and over and over again or keep rewatching the videos. Be active, be thoughtful, be doing things, be writing things down, drawing connections between concepts. The more actively engaged you are, the less passive you are about your studying, usually the better off you'll be, even if you can't study with other people. Some other tips, again, related to that kind of keeping up with things, keep your head above water. This course moves so quickly that if you're a little fuzzy on concepts on Monday, by Friday it might be complete gibberish for you. You want to be able to identify sooner than later when you're having trouble and seek out help, whether that's just doing more problems, reviewing the material more closely, whether that's talking to me one way or the other. Take advantage of those office hours. You can come in person if you're around, but there are those virtual office hours via Skype as well. And make sure you've really got a handle on the early concepts, especially how they connect to the bigger picture ideas. Look around you. Again, we emphasize using stats and research findings, being able to evaluate how that gets used in the real world. So don't just keep your nose in the book. Look at how you see statistics or research findings reported on social media or on the news, or how you hear people talking about it in just regular conversations. That'll really help ground these concepts in what it looks like in the real world. This is not a math class. This is something that people sometimes cock their heads at. This is a class that involves math, but the class is all about basically trying to understand the world around us in as systematic and careful a way as possible. Statistics and the calculations that underlie them are a part of that, and they're a part that we practice, and they're a part that you're graded on. But understanding why we're doing what we're doing and what the information actually tells us is essential. Real statisticians, real researchers do not sit down and calculate this stuff by hand. We have software that does it for us. What you need to know, what needs to carry forward, is we need to know which tests are appropriate, why we're doing what we're doing, and how to make sense of the findings that result. You're going to be graded on an introductory level of that kind of skill set, as well as just can you punch numbers into a calculator and get the right number out. It will be both, but again, don't underestimate the conceptual stuff. And finally, don't get cocky. That seems like an unusual one too. I've been kind of talking up that this is difficult for a lot of folks. Here's the reason why I say don't get cocky, especially in this course. A lot of the early material, especially in Unit 1, is going to involve stuff you've already done before. Here we're calculating an average, called a mean in this course. You might not have heard it called a mean, but you've almost certainly calculated it before. This is like junior high, late elementary school level mathematics here. You've seen it before, you almost certainly know how to do it. It's real easy to look at this and just kind of your eyes glaze over. You're like, all right, this is just kiddie stuff. And then the next thing you know, it's a couple of modules later, and you're looking at something like this and you have no idea where any of it came from. So don't let your guard down if the early stuff seems pretty easy or seems like review. Keep paying close attention not only to how it works, but how it connects to those bigger picture concepts that we're going to introduce. So don't get cocky, but also you want to keep up with what I call the plot of the course. There's a lot of information out there, a lot of different concepts and ideas, and again, it's being delivered in sort of a language you don't speak, that statistics ease. You have to learn that as well. One of the things I always tell people who struggle in this course, there's a lot less to understand than there is to remember. Well, what does that mean? What that means is that there's an underlying consistent structure under this course. There's really only a handful of major concepts, and everything else rotates around those. Every student I've ever had who struggled in this class and then has wound up doing well in it, has really improved their performance, they all reported that they experienced a click moment. And at that click moment, it always goes something along the lines of them saying that they realized how everything in the course was just different variations on the same basic concepts. There were only a few really important ideas that they needed to understand to be able to do almost anything in the class. Folks that never have that click moment, or before they get there, a lot of times they just try to memorize their way through things. That's a bad strategy, especially again given that a lot of it's in that sort of foreign language. It's really, really hard to memorize your way through success to this course. It's likely that you will make a lot of unforced mistakes. If you can recognize that consistent underlying structure, the course gets far, far easier than just trying to remember everything you're supposed to write down like it's like a Harry Potter spell or something. If I just recite the right words in the right order, something magic will happen. You want to avoid that type of studying approach and really focus on what are these important aspects. Related to that, every so often, to help people keep track of this plot, we will pause and we will talk about different ideas being either a POE or an FFS. These are little codes that I give to especially important material. So sometimes we'll stop and we'll be talking about POEs. Those are points of emphasis. Those are things that are especially important. So concepts, ideas that, again, are a major part of this framework of the course, of the big ideas of the class, of the processes we're trying to put together. POEs are not only important for understanding future material and current material, they're more likely to be emphasized when grading comes around. On quizzes, exams, even homework, you're more likely to see these points of emphasis, and they're likely to be worth more points. They're not going to be the only things on the exams. Anything can be on the exams, but it will disproportionately involve those points of emphasis. Any formula, any calculation, automatically consider that a point of emphasis. Again, it's just a portion of what you're doing, but you will be calculating, you will be applying formulas and calculating statistics on almost every graded assignment this semester. So we work directly with the data in addition to that conceptual stuff. Every calculation, you should be familiar with how to do it. One important note that I'll bring up later in the semester, you never have to memorize those formulas. I'm always going to give you a formula sheet. I have no interest in testing your ability to memorize statistical formulas. It's not something real statisticians do. So that's a POE, or a point of emphasis. Some items, especially early on, will be flagged as FFS, for future service. So for future service, that's a concept that isn't really crucial at that point in the semester, but it's a really important building block for the more complex stuff to come later in the semester. So some of it will become meaningful later in the course. Once in a while, I'll give you it for future service, and I'll just say this really is beyond the scope of this class. But gosh, if you get into grad school research or statistics, you're going to be seeing this an awful lot. So most of those for future services are later in the course, but some of them are going to apply later in your education. FFS items are less likely to appear in graded material at that point, but they're going to matter a lot later on. Once in a while, you'll see something that is labeled with both. It's a point of emphasis and it's a for future service. These are really, really important concepts that are not only important at that point in the session, but are also going to continue to be extremely important later on in the course as well. So again, important note, this is to help you focus your studying, to zoom in on the most important concepts, but everything we cover in class, in lecture, can and will often be on the exam. It's just that the POEs in particular, and eventually the for future services, those are things that are just about guaranteed to be on there and to be emphasized in your grading, but it won't be everything that's on the exam. All right, any questions? If so, you can contact me, come to the discussion forum, email me, or use the Skype office hours. For now, we are going to move on and wrap up Module 0 by talking about the big ideas of the class as a whole. See you there.